Well, good to see you all tonight. Bless your hearts. Glad you're here. I'm going to be preaching tonight out of the 4th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. How many old Star Trek people in here? Live long and prosper. Anybody? Yeah. That's the title of my message tonight. Live long and prosper. Now, tonight Moses is going to be giving a speech. I'm going to be preaching a Moses speech. This is a speech Moses gave to the children of Israel after 40 years of failure. After 40 years of wandering, now they're going to go. They're going to get to go into the Promised Land. And man, they're excited because they've been thinking about this, dreaming about this for a generation. And now the gates are open. God's opened the door, and they're going to get to go in. So Moses gathers everybody together, and he gives them this speech. And tonight we're going to be starting the speech. I'll finish it Sunday morning, which will include the 10 Commandments. So Sunday morning, I'm going to be preaching on the 10 Commandments. I don't know, when was the last time if you ever heard a sermon preached on the 10 Commandments? Well, anyway, I'm going to preach one Sunday morning. I've done this only like 2 times in my entire ministry, and we're going to be doing this Sunday morning. Now, so Moses gives this speech. But before we get into this tonight, I want to share with you that the laws that God has given to us are non-negotiable. You can't argue with them, you can't change them, you can't tweak them, you can't improve them, you can't shorten them. They're non-negotiable. I heard about a fellow that attended a very liberal church, and he was telling somebody about the 10 Commandments that his pastor preached, and he said that he didn't call them 10 Commandments, he didn't want to offend anybody, but he called them 4 suggestions and 6 do the best you can. Well, I'm not going to preach them as 4 suggestions and 6 do the best you can. They're 10 Commandments. And these are the laws that God gave to people. And now you can live by these laws or not. You get to choose. But when you break these laws, they break you. Now these are laws. In other words, they're rules that whenever you, in other words, if you break them, they break you. I'll just leave it at that. They're non-negotiable. So get your Bible, let's look at verse 1. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1. Now Israel, hear the decrees and laws I'm about to teach you. Follow them so that you may live and go in and take possession of the land, the Lord, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. So here he is. Let's just take verse 1. So God is saying, now Israel, these laws and decrees I'm about to teach you, you need to follow them so that you will live long and prosper. In other words, if you want to live happy, healthy, productive, joyful lives, these laws are absolutely necessary that you live by them. Any one of them, or the more of them that you break, the less value you have in your life, the less quality that you're going to get to live. You need to keep these laws and remember them. And see, we don't mess around with them. We don't change them. Look to verse 2. Do not add to what I command you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commands of the Lord, your God, that I give you. Keep these commands. Don't add to them. Don't subtract from them. They are not to be messed with. Simply don't mess with them, because these are laws. In other words, if you sat down and you had all the philosophers of earth in one room, and you sat down and you tried to find 10 rules to live happy lives by. In other words, we're going to invent this. Let me tell you what they come up with. Exactly these 10. These are laws. No matter, you can't add to them. You can't take one away. They're all here, and they have to be lived by. Now Moses is going to say, now by the way, there were some people who didn't live by some of these rules, and they are not here today. So let's read verse 3. I want you to notice that Moses says, you break these rules, and they break you. You saw with your own eyes what the Lord did at Baal Peor. The Lord your God destroyed from among you everyone who followed the Baal of Peor. But all of you who held fast to the Lord your God are still alive today. Now he's talking, that he means that the people who were there hearing this speech, they were still alive. They followed the Lord. But those that had followed the Baal, now the Baal is a false thunderstorm god. He was a god that the Canaanites and other people of that area worship. And he's known as a thunderstorm. He was a rain god, and they would pray to him, but they thought of the Baals, and so they called him Baal, B-A-A-L. And so whenever the people begin to worship the Baal, Moses says none of them are still alive today, but those who follow the Lord, they're here today. So any nation, or any family, or any person, any church, any community, any, whatever, any nation that lives by these laws is honored and respected. If you wonder why some families, some people, some churches, some nations, some communities, why are certain groups of people honored and respected above others? Why is it that some people look to these groups or these people and they give honor to them and they bless them because they're respected? Here's why. Let's read it. Verse 5. See, I have taught you decrees and laws as the Lord my God commanded me, so that you may follow them in the land you are entering to take possession of. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations who will hear all about these decrees and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. What other nation is so great as to have their gods near them, the way the Lord our God is near us whenever we pray to Him? And what other nation is so great as to have such righteous decrees and laws as this body of laws I'm setting before you today? And Moses is simply saying to these people, we are so fortunate and so blessed that God has given us these laws. Now you have to understand that the people prior to this, the Egyptians and the Canaanites and other great cultures and nations, they all had some codes to live by. The code of Hammurabi. They had other codes that they'd invented down through time. But none of those other codes or laws were anything close to these. These are pristine. These are absolute and are powerful. And Moses says, these laws given to us straight from the God who made us. I like to think of them as manufacturer's instructions. The God who made us told us how to live. He said, you break these manufacturer's instructions and you're in trouble. So he said, Moses said, look, we have been given the laws of God. God gave us these. And how blessed we are and how fortunate. And any nation that lives by these laws, even America. You know, I'm going to say again at the end of the service, I'm worried about our nation tonight. Not just tonight, but I'm concerned about us because we have trampled under the laws of God. We've walked roughshod over the decrees of the Lord. And God cannot bless a nation that worships other gods and that will not put Him first. So, what are these laws? Now, Sunday morning we're going to get into the Ten Commandments. We're going to be talking about them individually. But tonight we're going to be talking about them general, just in general terms. So what are these laws that simply cannot be negotiated? And the first is, you have to remember the Lord. We're such a forgetful people, aren't we? But we have to remember. Let's read this because then I'll talk more about it. Verse 9. Only be careful and watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen, or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. Teach them to your children and their children after them. Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when He said to me, assemble the people, etc., etc. Now we're going to pick up there about verse 11, but let's just stop a minute. God says, or Moses says to the people, remember, don't forget this. Don't forget what God did when we came out of Egypt and the Passover. Don't forget when we came to the Red Sea and the waters parted. Don't forget that. He said, now here's what's going to happen. You're going to get it. You're going to get into the promised land now. You're going to go in there and you're going to get comfortable. You're going to get fat. You're going to get full. I mean, everything you wanted is going to be there. I mean, it's going to be great. And when you get in there and you get comfortable, fat, and full, you know what you're going to do? You're going to forget the Lord. Now, do you know what happens to us? The same thing happens to us. When we get comfortable, when we get everything we want, whenever, you know, God's been blessed, we get blessed and we get blessed and we get blessed, and pretty soon we just take God for granted. Yeah. Well, we do. But you know what? The closest we can ever get to the Lord is sometimes when we get in trouble, then we get back, don't we? But we need to remember that day. And remember what God is in. Let's pick up verse 11. You came near and stood at the foot of the mountain when it blazed with fire to the very heavens, with black clouds and deep darkness. Then the Lord spoke to you out of the fire. And you heard the sound of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. He declared to you His covenant, the 10 Commandments, which He commanded you to follow, and then wrote them on 2 stone tablets. And the Lord directed me that at that time to teach you the decrees and laws you are to follow in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. Moses knew that that human beings would forget. There was a time in my ministry back, I'm going to say 17, 18 years ago. I was feeling the touch of God to do something unique and different and new. And I have an entrepreneurial spirit. I love to start new things, and I'm a beginner and a starter and a launcher, and I'm trying to learn to be a finisher, but I like to start better than I like to finish. But there was a time when I was feeling in my life the closeness of God. God was doing something, and I didn't quite know what it was. I was kind of getting some hints, and then there was this one day, I'll never forget it as long as I live. There was this one day when God, I didn't see Him, you know. He didn't show up, but I knew He was there. I remember I was out in front of my house, and for 10 or 15 minutes, me and the Lord, we walked together, and we talked. And He told me things that I'd ask Him questions. I'd just be real blank, and I'd say, Lord, what about this? And I asked Him about my kids. You know, Lord, what about my kids? And everything He told me has come true to the last degree. And He told me this, that He said that He wanted me to start a church, and I started a church. And I said, Lord, the only thing I ask is that if I go there, I want you to go with me. And He said, I promise you. He called me son. I'll never forget it. He said, son, I will never leave you. And boy, that's touched my life, and there's so much to me. He called me son. He said, son, I will never leave you. And you know what happened? That was such a powerful day. I thought to myself, I'll never forget this day. Oh, this day will keep my faith strong all the way through. No matter what happens, I can remember this day. Well, guess what? You can't live in the past.
No.
And about the time the first trouble came down the road, I forgot all about that day.
Yeah.
And I said, Lord, you don't care about me, Lord. You've abandoned me. What's the problem with us? When things go good, we forget the Lord.
Yeah.
And when things go bad, sometimes we remember. Hopefully we do. So let nothing keep you from remembering the Lord. Think about the times that you felt close to the Lord. Think of the times, you know, I heard somebody say one time, if ever in your life you were closer to the Lord than you are right now, you're backslidden. Think about that. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Well, think about those times and remember them. Talk to your family about it. Tell your children about it. Do your children know whether or not you love the Lord? Do your children know that you pray? Do your children know that you care? See, we're to teach our children the things of God. Teach them about how much we love the Lord. Now, some people have very formal Christian education programs in their homes. They will teach their children formally, you know, this and this and that, and I applaud that. That's wonderful. But I want you to not forget that more is caught than is ever taught. Okay, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
Yeah.
More is caught than ever taught. Well, your kids are going to catch from you more than you're going to teach them.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to watch. And they're going to watch how mom and daddy handle life. They're going to watch how mom and daddy pray. They're going to watch if does mom and daddy really love people. They're going to know this stuff. And be careful that you make sure you teach your children well. Teach them to love the Lord. Because if we're not careful, we'll lose a generation. And then we lose another generation. We lose a third generation. And soon we're going to have a nation that's forgotten the Lord entirely. And that's what's happened to these children of Israel in days to come. Now let's go down to verse 15, because there's one more thing that I want to talk about that is very, very important to us. And that is, if you want to keep these laws, you summarize them We're to worship nothing but the Lord. We're to worship nothing but the Lord. He alone, exclusive worship of Him. Not a form of Him, not a picture of Him. We don't worship anything other than the true thing. We don't worship a book about Him. We don't worship a piece of artwork about Him. We don't worship a symbol. We worship Him. Now let's read verse 15. Here's why. You saw no form of any kind the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the fire. Remember I told you Horeb is Mount Sinai. The Arabs call it Horeb. The Israelis call it Sinai. It's the same mountain, different name. Okay? So, you saw no form of any kind the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the fire. Therefore watch yourselves very carefully, so that you do not become corrupt and make for yourselves an idol, an image of any shape, whether formed like a man or a woman, or like an animal or on earth, or any bird that flies in the air, or like any creature that moves along the ground, or any fish in the waters below. And when you look up into the sky and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the heavenly array, do not be enticed into bowing down to them and worshiping things the Lord your God has apportioned to all the nations under heaven. Now, what we evangelicals, we are what's referred to as iconoclasts. We break icons. We don't have our churches, we don't have statues. Well, we got cows hung up on the wall. But we don't worship those cows. No, we eat those cows. No vegetarian. No, just. But you know, some churches are very icon-laden. They got pictures and statues everywhere. Well, we evangelicals, we don't believe, or we don't, it's not that we don't believe, we don't think we need statues and pictures and symbols. Right. We come and we worship the Lord who spoke out of the fire of the mountain. All we heard was the voice. And that's all we need is the Lord Himself. We don't need pictures of Him. We don't worship something less than Him. We worship the real deal. Amen? Okay. So that's what we are. Now the Lord didn't want us to make anything to represent Him. We don't need to make anything like an idol or a statue to represent Him. We're to worship, we don't worship a building. And I know some people worship their church buildings or worship their statues or their windows or whatever. We don't worship a building. No. You know, you can have church in a cow barn. That's right. You can have church on a creek bank. You can have church anywhere. It's not, the church is not the building. Right. There is no sacred space in any building on planet Earth. Even the Vatican, that's not sacred space. Right. You know where sacred space is? Right here. Yeah. It's in the heart and the life of everybody. That's sacred space. Right. So, Lord didn't want us to build, to have a building to worship, and He didn't want us to worship a book either. Now, I'm going to kind of get a little close to it. God didn't want us to worship the Bible. Oh, that shook you up, didn't it? See, the Bible is the love of God's Word, and it's true, it's real, it's genuine, it teaches us life. There ain't one thing wrong in it. I mean, the Bible is God's Word, and we need to believe it and practice every word of it, but it is not deity. It is not deity. God alone is to be worshipped. We don't worship the Bible, we worship Him. Now, cowboys and farmers, we love our animals, but we don't love them more than we love the Lord. Right. We love our horses, we love our cows and our dogs and whatever. We love them, but we don't love them as much as we love the Lord. We love our hobbies and our interests, but not more than we love the Lord. Has there ever been a time when you liked some hobby more than you loved the Lord? It's kind of soul-searching time. I used to love to fish, boy, better than anything I could think of. Man, I love to fish. Everything I want to go fishing all the time. That's all I want to do is get you stinking little old fish. And now that's what they are now. I see it. But boy, back in that day. And then there was a time I wanted to go quail hunting every day of the world. You know, I loved my bird dogs and my shotguns, and I thought, but you know what? If we're not careful, we'll get our hobbies, our bass boats, ahead of the Lord. Yeah. And we got to love Him alone. We can love our families more than we love the Lord. Did you know that? Yeah. We can love our institutions more than we love the Lord. I have known people who traded their careers for their family. In other words, they sought after their career with such vigor that they lost their families. I've known preachers who lost their families because they spent so much time at their churches. Folks, this has to be, we got to get this thing right. We got to get this in balance. I'll never forget one of the most embarrassing things that I can remember now out of my early years of the pastorate. This was a young Scotty that did this, okay? Not the old Scotty. One time I was pastoring the Halltown Baptist Church. Wonderful people, some of the best people on the earth. No but in this sense. I mean, they're super, super people. And young pastor, this first church I'd ever pastored. Well, we were going to have I'd been there a while, and we were going to have a Sunday that started off, we call it the Year of the Family. We were going to focus on the family. I was going to preach on family. We were going to have Bible studies on family. We were going to have study groups, and we're going to do all these family. We planned a whole year of the family. And I told the people, I said, now, on the first Sunday that we kick this off, I'm going to preach a sermon you will never forget. And if there's any of those people from Halltown here tonight, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You still haven't forgotten that sermon. What we did for the Year of the Family, the first Sunday, I walked up to the pulpit after we'd had our singing and all that. Came my time to preach. And I said, now I promised you that I'm going to preach a sermon today you'll never forget about the family. And what I did was, at that moment, I walked down out of the pulpit, got my wife by the arm, and my kids, and we went out the back door and got in my car and went home. I don't recommend that. And if you're a young preacher here trying to, don't do that. I mean, thank God for those loving people at Halltown. They let me come back. They shouldn't have. But I wanted to teach. It was about the family. Family's important. Family's important. And we've got to remember how important it is. But nothing is more important than the Lord. Now let me say as I close here, that failure to do this has a very high price. High price. Let me read verse 20. But as for you, the Lord took you and brought you out of the iron smelting furnace out of Egypt, to be the people of His inheritance, as you now are. The Lord was angry with me because of you, and He solemnly swore that I would not cross the Jordan and enter the good land the Lord your God has given you as an inheritance. I will die in this land. I will not cross the Jordan. But you are about to cross over and take possession of that good land. Now let's stop right there. I'm going to pick up verse 23 in just a moment. If you'll remember, Moses led the people for 40 years out of Egypt. But one day, in frustration, he took his rod and he hit a rock. And in anger and frustration, he took the place of God. In other words, he said, I'm so sick of you whining people. I'm tired of every time you get thirsty, you blame God. I'm going to give you enough water to choke on, or something like that, And he took his rod and he hit a rock. Yeah. And water came out of it. But in his anger and his frustration, he didn't let God do it. He took on his own strength. Well, God said to him, because of that, you failed. And you don't get to go into the promised land. You get to stay on this side. Now that was a sad day for Moses. Because I know he wanted to go to that promised land. He got to go up on top of Mount Pisgah's lofty height, and he looked over into the promised land. He got to look, but he didn't get to go. A young man named Joshua took him on in. He forgot. He forgot that failure to love the Lord and remember Him and worship Him only has a price. Let's pick up verse 23. Be careful not to forget the covenant of the Lord your God that He made with you. Do not make for yourselves an idol in the form of anything the Lord your God has forbidden. Verse 24. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. After you have had children and grandchildren and have lived in the land a long time, if you then become corrupt and make any kind of idol, doing evil in the eyes of the Lord your God, and arousing His anger, I call heaven and earth as a witness against you this day, that you will quickly perish from the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess. You will not live there long, but will certainly be destroyed. The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and only a few of you will survive among the nations to which the Lord will drive you. Then you will worship man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see, hear, or eat, or smell. Well, that was a bad prophecy. I mean, it was bad. Moses said, if you forget the Lord, you will die as a nation. Is it possible that the United States of America has forgotten the Lord? Are we dying as a nation? Is God not giving our leadership? We don't trust our leaders. We don't trust our economy. We don't trust our government, our institutions, our Supreme Court, congressmen. What has happened? I believe that we have forgotten the Lord. And He's taking His hand off us as a nation. And I think that until we come back, that we are a nation that is going to be a second-class, third-class nation. If we survive. But I'm about to give you the best news tonight you've ever heard. I want you to pick up in verse 29. Now, because, dear friends, this is the great hope that I find in Deuteronomy. I want you, if you've got a Bible, you write in, I want you to circle verse 29. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find Him. If from there. I thought about just naming this sermon, if from there. Because some of you tonight are there. You are there. You are at the bottom. You have forgotten the Lord and you feel abandoned. You're not receiving the blessings of God. And you're at a place, you are there. But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find Him. If you seek Him with all your heart and with all your soul. If from there. That's good news to me. That's great news to me. Because there are times I've been there. But if from there. I don't know what your life is like. I don't know where you are. Some of you may really be in a desperate, dark hole tonight. But you need to know that if from there you call the Lord. Some of your marriages, your families may be in terrible chaos tonight. There may be hate and miscommunication and distrust in your family. And you may be thinking there is no way to restore this. But if from there you call upon the Lord. Your finances may be in such a mess tonight that there's no way for you to come out. But if from there you call upon the Lord. So no matter where you are, I want you to remember that if from there, at that horrible place, you will call upon the Lord, you will find Him if you seek Him with all your heart. That's the good news I have to tell you tonight. So whenever you are or whoever you are, when you seek the Lord, you will find Him. You will find Him. The Lord is merciful, and He does not forget His promises. So wherever you are, if from there you seek the Lord. Would you pray with me?